Welcome to CBR TV. I'm Jonah Weiland in the Tiki Room at New York Comic Con. Sitting to my right are one of the members of the cast and the co-creator of Black Sails on Stars, Jon Steinberg, who we had on video before when you were working on Human Target, and Toby Stephens here. He plays Captain Flynn. Thanks for coming out. So the basic storyline is that this is a kind of precursor to Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. Start with the creation of the show and where that came from for you.
I think we realized that in order to tell a story like this, you have to give an audience an entry point, and so Treasure Island just felt natural. In a lot of ways, it is the story that gave rise to all of the pirate stories after it. I think what we wanted to do was to dig back in the other direction and to try to figure out where that story came from. And so it's a little bit precursor to Treasure Island. There's a lot of historical material in it. Historical characters, the environment that they were living in Nassau in the 17 teens was a real place where the British governor left, couldn't deal with the pirate problem anymore, and so these people were left to their own devices.
Toby, I want you to talk a little bit about creating this pirate character, Captain Flynn, because obviously Pirates of the Caribbean has been dominant in pirates of the last 5-10 years here, but you get a chance to kind of bring something new to it. What were you thinking about when you were building this character for yourself?
Well, really, I mean, because Captain Flynn is in Treasure Island, but he's dead by the beginning of Treasure Island. It's his treasure on Treasure Island, the one that he'd amassed, he and his crew. Yeah. We know that he was a terrifying pirate, and we know that he went to bury the treasure with 10 men and he came back alone. More than that, we don't know. So it was really, for John and Robert, it was a blank canvas. And I really took my starting point from the first script that I was given. And then tried to create this character that was, I just didn't want him to be cliche-ridden. And I wanted him to be real. I wanted him to be a real human being. And I think that's what John and Robert wanted. And they've created this perfect backdrop for him to be a real person, in that it is a real place. Nassau is a real place. It had a place in history. So you've got this historical backdrop, and you've got these real pirates around him. And we wanted to humanize these people and make them, make their drama a human drama rather than some fantastical drama that we can't relate to.
Sure, Jon. It's interesting that pirates haven't been more of a mainstay in popular culture, and it seems, as soon as I heard that the show was happening, like, of course we need this on TV. Help me out here. Have there been any other real pirate shows that many? I can't think of any real successful ones.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, it's been touched on here and there. I mean, I think it's for a really good reason that we live with every day, which is you don't want to shoot on the water. And you have to. In order to tell this story, you have to be able to show the ships they sailed in and the battles they got into. And it's only really recently that I think the visual effects technology has gotten to the point where it is good enough, cheap enough, and fast enough to create a world that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, in a lot of ways, at the same time, we're trying to make this world feel real and historically accurate. It's fully constructed. There's no place to go on location and shoot Nassau in the 17 teens. It just doesn't exist anymore.
So you're not actually out on the ocean at all when you're shooting?
No, we've never really...
So no one's booting over the boat, over the side of the boat, throwing up or anything like that?
It's shooting on the water is a really good way to make sure you have to stop shooting your show sooner than you'd want to. and so we avoid it like the plague.
Toby, this sounds like, I haven't seen much of the show, but this sounds like a pretty demanding role, at least physically. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, look, there were long days. I mean, we did a lot of training before we started filming, just to get physically in shape. I mean, they weren't looking for some sort of body aesthetic. What they wanted was people who looked like they worked on ships, and that were fit enough, actors who were fit enough to do extremely long days doing, battle sequences. I mean, most of the drama is about, the human politics that are going on and people who are just trying to survive. So there's a lot of kind of acting that's required. But these things are punctuated by, these very violent battle sequences that give the audience a sense of what it would have been like to be on one of these ships. There's nothing romanticized about it. There's no glorification of this. It was really scary. It was very claustrophobic, and it was extremely violent. And to be ready to do all of that kind of stuff, a lot of these sequences were filmed over days and days and days, where they're blowing up ships and you're having to do all kinds of physical stuff, fights and stuff. You've got to be fit. So, you know, we had to do a lot of training at the beginning and then throughout the filming period, and in the interim between filming, I had to kind of keep in shape. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, so it's not really that easy to spring back into shape. Now I'm in shape, I want to stay there. You know?
John, Toby said something earlier. He's like, he wanted to try to avoid cliches with his character. How much of the show, because the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are very tongue-in-cheek in a lot of ways. How much tongue-in-cheek is there in this, or is it much more serious?
I think it has a sense of humor. I think it's important. I don't think you can tell a story about people, or certainly not any people I would understand or want to spend time with if there's no humor to it.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think we really tried very hard to strip out everything that felt like it was part of a cliche, everything that felt like it didn't have a reasonable justification for being a part of that world, and it was just there because it had always been there.
Yeah.
And to make it a story about people going to work every morning and trying to have the world feel like they inhabited a world with that kind of reality.
Growing up, I was a big Robert Louis Stevenson fan. In fact, when I was about 9 years old, we went to Tahiti, and I got to go to one of his houses that he stayed in. Did you guys grow up fans of this? Kidnapped is my favorite book of all time. Did you guys have any experience with him as a kid? Did you read much?
Yeah, I mean, I read the book. I mean, it's and I think in a lot of ways the experience I had with that book was in the iterations that came after it. I mean, I grew up with Errol Flynn in the house, and I grew up with all of the Next Order things. I mean, in a lot of ways, Han Solo's story is a pirate story, and I don't know that it exists without all of the stuff that came before it that really owes itself to Treasure Island. So I think, I don't know that you can be a kid and go to the movies and not have a piece of it. Yeah.
That's true. What about you? Did you grow up with Robert Louis Stevenson?
Yeah, I mean, I read it. It was read to me when I was a child, and then I read it. And I read a lot of Robert Louis Stevenson when I was a child. So it was very much in my, it was a world that I knew, right. I was familiar with. But then again, I'd seen it sort of reiterated in film and TV versions of the same thing, which just seemed to take it further and further from what it was. And I don't know. I mean, I think what's great about what we're doing is that it's as John says, we can go back and we can kind of really, really tell a story about what piracy was really like, rather than some sort of fictive version of it. Right. Obviously, this is partly fictive, but it tries to give a real sense of texture to the period, to what it would have been like, and the pragmatic reasons for why they were doing it. Treasure Island seems to just deal with a very, very slim kind of aspect of this. We're creating a world here where these people exist in a context.
I'm looking forward to it. It's on Stars in January of 2014. Black Sails. John, Toby, thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm Jonah Weiland, and this is CBR TV.